Hi, thank you for coming to #Adulting Decisions, Offers, and Negotiations. We will do quick intros about ourselves, but we will hopefully be giving you all a pretty full picture of all the things to consider when you're going through the process of not just getting an offer, but the kind of background of that from a recruiting perspective, weighing benefits, all that good stuff. So let's get into it. If this works for me. Okay. I'm John. I am on the employer relations team. I've been with Tufts about 3 years. I went to UMass Amherst and graduated in 2010. I was a French major. I guess what else? After college, I moved out to San Francisco. I wound up in tech recruiting out there doing university recruiting. So I sort of got the recruiting aspect of things and then decided to move back home to Massachusetts and leverage some of that recruiting experience to help students. So that is why I am here.
Hi, everyone. If we haven't met before, I'm Cheryl Rosenberg. I am an assistant director and career advisor in the Career Center at Tufts, and I have been working in career services with college students for the past 10 years. And one fun thing for this presentation is that I'm a salary negotiation trainer for the American Association of University Women.
Hey everyone, I'm Robin Kahn and I am an associate director in the Career Center, but I work mostly with engineers and computer scientists. I'm an alum of the class of, I like to say, the class of old, so you don't count how old I am. Then I went and got an MBA, worked in HR for thousands of years, and then I've been actually back at Tufts for 14 and a half years, which is a really long time. So I worked in, I was the college relations manager at Analog Devices and decided to come back to this side of the desk, so similar to John. So we're going to jump into the presentation now and just talk about the fact that you came probably because you're mostly wanting to think about the negotiation piece. But it really starts way before that. Before you start applying to jobs, before you know where you're going, you have to decide what you want in that first job. And we're going to talk about this periodically through the evening. So you might want to actually focus on an industry or a location, or only work for a boss that will just leave you the heck alone, or what benefits you need because you know really the only reason you're taking a first job is you want them to pay for your master's degree. Whatever's really important to you, you need to keep that in mind. John, the next slide. Because you don't even need to bother applying to jobs that you're not going to be interested in. So when you get to that negotiation stage, that job that you've been applying for is already a good fit for you because that's what you did. Now it's the fine tuning and the negotiation. So if you know what you want in a job, you'll be able to write better cover letters. You'll interview well. You'll be able to negotiate because you know what things are absolute for you. And then in the end, you can take the job knowing you've only applied for jobs that you actually were willing to take.
Cool. So I'm going to also set sort of a background view for folks. Something that usually comes up when we're talking about negotiation is who do I talk with? Who are sort of the players on the employer end? So just to give a quick overview of the process and the people that are involved. So this is a generic recruiting process at an organization. Obviously, it can vary from organization to organization, but generally speaking, you have an application where you apply, obviously. Then there's generally a phone screen stage, then some sort of on-site interview, or these days, usually a Zoom on-site, which would probably entail you meeting with a small handful of people, usually individually, but sometimes in a group. And then ultimately, you know, an organization reviews the materials and feedback, and then there's an offer stage, hopefully to you. Like I said, this is very generic, but this is the general order. Sometimes there'll be 2 phone screens, sometimes there'll be more than 1 on-site, but this is the general flow. So also backing up, as I said, another question that kind of comes up is people say, well, who should I really be talking to when I'm sort of communicating anything, even before necessarily the offer? So I just wanted to give you sort of again, a generic sort of view of what a typical organization looks like and the flow of this. So people that you are likely to be working with in this process are the recruiter, who is probably the person who is reaching out to you, helping to sort of schedule your interviews, getting you set up, gathering the feedback on the back end, pulling an offer together. The hiring manager, who is hopefully someone you are meeting at some point throughout the process. They're the person that is generally the manager of the team that you're being hired onto, oftentimes the person that you're going to be reporting to directly. And then there's oftentimes an HR business partner who is also an HR with the recruiter. They're not very involved in individual processes, but they help set compensation. And so what happens when you negotiate, students often say, like, who should I be talking to if I do want to negotiate? Generally speaking, that's going to be the recruiter. The recruiter is generally the person that knows most about the mechanics of that. There may be some instances when the recruiter isn't really involved and the only person you've really been talking to is the hiring manager, but that's less likely. So generally speaking, you do want to communicate with the recruiter directly. What happens when you go into a negotiation if you say, I'd really like this much money? The recruiter almost never can give you an answer right there on the phone. And the reason is not that they're playing games or anything. They have to go behind the scenes and confer with people like the HR business partner to talk about salary bands and talk about where they can move you. So just wanted to give you a very general overview of some of the other people that are involved here. Again, generic. Okay. Is this me again? Yeah. Okay. So what exactly is negotiating? So negotiating plays a critical role in our ability to secure satisfying income and benefits. We can negotiate in more than one way: in base salary, in our bonus structure, or in our stock grants, in sign-on bonus or relocation package, or in our time off or other benefits. So Robin's going to go in, we're all going to go into elements of this, but most people, when they think about negotiating, only think about like their base salary, and there are other things that you can negotiate on, which we wanted to sort of like open up your field of view on those aspects to start things off. So when are opportunities to negotiate? So whenever you're considering a new opportunity, obviously that's a great opportunity to negotiate, or when you're entering a yearly evaluation at a job, or, you know, here are some common scenarios. So like I said, when you're starting a new position, when you're going up for a promotion at a job as well. And these are like general instances. Obviously, you won't be going up for a promotion just yet, but we want you to be sort of thinking ahead.
So for the next little bit, we're going to talk about 4 steps to salary negotiation, just as a way to organize each step as you prepare, and for your how-to. So the first step that we'll talk about is know your value, then knowing your target numbers, your strategy, and practicing at the end. So knowing your value, this is really the first step to preparing to negotiate. How do you confidently and articulately share the value that you bring and the contribution that you will make to your position in a way that resonates with the employer? Right, so we always want to think about, we always want to put ourselves in the employer's shoe and really think about how they're receiving you and how they're hearing you as you're crafting what you're going to say and how you're going to articulate your value. So I know this seems intuitive. You're going to interview, of course, but for many, like some of us included, we're not always comfortable talking about our accomplishments. And for some of us, there might even be cultural norms in how you were raised that make this much more difficult. So it's a step, because it's really important to pause even after the interview and really reflect on this as you start to create a strategy for yourself to negotiate your salary. So, you know, be honest with yourself. Are you slightly underqualified for this position? Or do you perfectly meet the qualifications? Or maybe you're a little overqualified. You're a super duper strong candidate. And you can think about some of these questions on the screen here as you reflect. You know, what differentiates you? What sets you apart? Or what do you bring, or how do you bring value to the company or the organization? What skills, accomplishments, and work experiences demonstrate your value or the contributions you'll make to the position? So you can also think about experiences you've had while you were in college. You know, did you do an internship that's similar to the job that you're negotiating for, or that really set you up well? Maybe you even interned at this company before, right? Or did you do something else that's totally different, but there are transferable skills? So these are just some pieces that you can think about. So there's 3 numbers that you really want to think about, or I call them targets, that we want to set as a next step here. So just to get a little vocabulary in, your target salary is that's the word I'm going to use to refer to like your worth based on objective market wage data. And we'll show you a little later how to do that research and figure out what is that market wage data. Then the salary range really refers to a range that you're going to use to negotiate with the employer. And what we'll do, I'll explain this again later, is that the target salary that we research and figure out first, that's going to be the anchor of the range, the bottom of our range. And then you want to consider a walk-away point too. So this is the lowest salary that you're willing to accept and still reach an agreement for negotiation. And it's also a tool to prevent you from accepting a salary that you might regret later. Okay, so how to benchmark benefits and salary. So you're first going to research and identify some comparable job titles. We'll get into how to do that in a minute. You'll find the market rate for the position and establish your target salary. Use your target salary to create your target range, as I just explained, and we'll walk through an example. Determine your walk-away point. And it's important that you create a realistic budget. The budget is for you, it's not for the employer, but this will help you figure out what will make sense for you and also figure out what your walk-away point is. And then you'll also want to assess the value of benefits. So we'll take a moment to talk about some of the various benefits that you'll hear about in the process, especially as you move along in an interview process and get closer and closer to an offer.
Okay, so what I feel about this slide is it's going to seem like it's out of context and it's just an aside. It sort of is. It's sort of a teaching slide that reminds you that up to 30% of the value of any offer is these benefits, and you're not thinking about them, right? So it's costing the company a lot, and big companies have more benefits and littler companies have fewer. And so you have to be thinking, what is the value to you? And remember, it's always about to you of these benefits, but we wanted to make sure that somewhere in this presentation, we got you to think about these benefits. So let's go through them. There are a variety of different kinds. So there are, you know, the medical insurances, the medical, dental, vision, and not every company has all 3. Most have the ability for you to have medical, but they're going to cost varying amounts. So some companies will pay 20% across the board and the employees paying 80%, and other companies will pay 100% for those bonuses. If you think about that, how much money is coming out of your paycheck may actually be as important as that salary is to you, because less of it is going out. So you need to know that. Personal time off, or PTO as it's often called these days, is vacation, sick time, family sick, personal days. Many companies conglomerate them all and say you get 3 weeks of PTO or 4 weeks of PTO. And then here we are at Tufts where we wouldn't call ourselves well paid, but we get 4 weeks automatically, right? So that, and plus sick time, and the sick time can be personal or family sick. And so different industries have very, very different benefits in terms of PTO. And you don't want to expect in one kind of company to get the PTO that you would have gotten in a different industry. So that's something you're going to be researching. Then there are all sorts of other insurances that are worth a lot, but some of them are really only worth it if you don't ever want to use them. So those are things like life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, business travel accident. You actually would like to know they exist, and you never want to have any access to them ever, right? Then there's other compensation things that really belong in the comp, not the benefit side, but I don't want you to forget about them, so I put them on the slide. Things like bonuses and profit sharing, and which things do you control, which things are granted, which things are yearly, how much is that? And you can ask what the average over the last 5 years of someone at your level has gotten. That may make a big difference and may make it so you need less negotiating if you are going to get that kind of bonus. 401ks are one of those things that are slightly confusing to students, I find, but basically what this is deferred compensation. Back in the day, everyone had pensions, and that's a rare thing now to have an actual part of your salary that you get when you retire. But the 401k is a way to contribute your own money, and then the company may contribute their money to your retirement. So it's deferred. You don't get taxed on it at all now. It actually takes your taxable income down, and you get taxed on it when you retire. There are lots of companies who make actual contributions to a 401k, whether you contribute or not. And then there are other companies that match your contribution. So if I get to put a plug in, always at least contribute to your 401k up to what gets matched. Because it turns out that the time value of money and all of that you'll be happy you did. You can remember this little lecturette. There's tuition assistance. A lot of people take their first job just because there is a good benefit where they're going to get paid to go to grad school. So you want to know more about that. And then there are various little perks like gym memberships or pet insurance or free lunch at places like the big tech companies. The important thing to know is that the two things that are in the red boxes are negotiable. Things like medical, dental, 401k matches are generally not. Those are company standard plans. So the other thing you may want our help with is what can I negotiate on? And I think Cheryl and John will talk to you a little bit about that. But those two red box areas are often things that you can negotiate on, at least in that first year, because they want to give you something. Most companies want to do a little negotiating so you feel satisfied. But other things you should know about, and there's real value there, but not because they're part of the negotiation.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, so back to, or just changing focus to negotiating your compensation. So the first thing you want to do is to do some research. Find a comparable job title and use multiple resources for your research that use employer reported data instead of individually reported data. So Salary.com, which this is a picture of what the website looks like right now, and Payscale.com both use employer reported data. There are some other websites that are also helpful, but you need to keep in mind that the information comes from individuals posting online. So that's going to be Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a great one to check. But again, that's like employees posting instead of the employer saying what different people are making. And LinkedIn, you can also get some information there. So great supplemental resources, but also pair that with a Salary.com or Payscale.com. And then it's also really important to talk to some real people and hear from them, right? So like Robin would say, networking is key. This is something you can start to fold into your career conversations or informational interviews that you're doing now. Add this question to your list of questions that you ask. but it's something you can continue to ask throughout the process or as you talk to mentors, alumni, and other professionals in the field. So as you're talking to folks, ask questions like, what's a general starting salary for an entry-level job in this field, right? What would be a competitive entry-level salary for this field, right? The more information you get from real people working in the industry, as even at companies that you may want to work at, is going to help add to that data pile that's helping you figure out what the market value of the position is. Okay, so this is an example on this slide of what you see when you're searching salary ranges on salary.com. So for this position, I typed in, marketing assistant, and in salary.com, it's not showing right now, but before this screen, you actually choose it'll come up with like a few different options that match what you searched for. And you can look at the job descriptions and see what seems close-ish to the position that you're looking for. And then once you select one, you'll get this little graph. And there are some tabs on the right-hand side where you can enter your education and who you report to and how many years of experience you have. So for this one, marketing assistant one, I said that it was a person who has a bachelor's degree and less than 1 year of experience, so an entry-level job. And that calculated and told me, you can see on this half of the screen that the estimated salary is going to be about $2,457 less than the median pay, just because of the education level and the experience level, right? And so there's this nice little bell curve that shows me the median, the average market value for a marketing assistant one type job in the city of Boston. So you can also search by city and see how things vary. If you're looking for a job in San Francisco or New York, it might be a little bit different, right? So it'll factor all that in as well. So based on this, I can sort of see, okay, if I'm really underqualified or like I got the offer, but it was a stretch, I don't have any experience. I interviewed great. I am a great candidate, but it was a stretch. I might be looking for a target salary somewhere in that 25% to 50% median, right? If I'm like a really strong candidate, I might be looking in the 50 to 75% range. And again, I'm going to factor in the information it told me about my education level and my experience level. I'm going to look at this and say, okay, I think let's set a target salary for, $45,000. That's a good entry-level salary based on my experience. Which is going to be less than 1 year and my education level and this median. So again, considering, do the research, talk to people, and like I mentioned before, create a budget. And the budget's going to be for you. You're not going to really discuss the budget with the employer, but again, it'll give you a sense of where your money might go, as well as help you to decide what your walk-away point might be. Think about what's the absolute minimum that you could earn. And you can use a paycheck calculator online to determine what your actual take-home pay might be after taxes and some of the benefits are withdrawn. There's a few of them. If you Google paycheck calculator, and there'll be a couple free ones that come right up that you can play with as you're making your budget. So find a salary range and establish your target salary, right? That was the first step. And I said that looking at that graph from the previous slide, we're going to set the target salary about 45 based on my value, what I think my value is, as well as the market value based on research. From there, you're going to identify a target salary range. So once you identify your target salary, you can stretch that number upwards. I would say not to stretch it more than 20%. And that's going to be your range. So when you share your desired salary in a negotiation, studies suggest that you will be more successful if you put your target salary at the bottom of the range instead of just asking for it, right? So instead of asking, oh, I was hoping to earn 45,000, I'm going to put it at the bottom of the range and stretch it upwards. And giving that range will suggest, that you're more cooperative and more flexible. Again, that's what the studies show, and that's where this idea of this comes from. So in our example, again, I established the target salary of 45,000, and the range is going to be, 45,000 to 50,000. That's what I'm going to ask for. And actually, go back one slide, because I'm going to ask everybody, just enter in the chat for me. Has anybody ever been asked to enter a salary on a job application? Like you were filling out like the online portal for a company, and it said, desired salary, and there was a box. Have you ever had to do that? And if so, what did you put? What'd you put in that box?
Jeopardy music.
Go ahead and type in the chat box. Put the salary range that was listed on their website. Oh, great. That's a really great thing. So you did your research first, and then you entered what you knew the range was for that position. That is 100% what I would say to do. Anybody else have ideas or something that they've done before? Good. Average for that position on Glassdoor. So it seems like you guys know to do the research before entering it in that box. I put what a friend was making. Okay, so you talked to somebody in a similar position. That's good. In that box, and I brought this up because yes, do the research before. It sounds like you guys are already doing it before you enter it into that box. Like just pause the application and go do a couple searches really quick. But also make sure you enter a range there if possible. If there's enough spaces in the box to permit a few characters, enter a range there rather than the number for the reasons that I just talked through. All right, we can move on to know your strategy. Okay, so now you know how to figure out all the numbers. So what do you actually say, right? So here's a really good example of what you can say in a conversation with a recruiter or whoever you're talking to. I'm really excited about this opportunity and I can't wait to join the team. This is a great offer. I'm wondering if it's flexible at all. Based on my qualifications and recent experiences, you might be more specific here if possible. And knowing the market value for this position, I was expecting something between, and then you'll state your range. In this example, it's 60 and 65, right? And then you'll wait for them to respond. So it's really important that you continue to express your enthusiasm and not just sort of ask for what you want or even express disappointment, right? The employer, the recruiter you're talking to is really not going to perceive that well, right? So it's important to express your enthusiasm and just stay really positive throughout the interaction.
Okay, so to break everything down in terms of this conversation, we're going to talk through some do's and don'ts that we've already addressed most of them. So as Cheryl was just talking about, whenever you're entering into this discussion, make sure you're positive and enthusiastic and respectful and calm, but also direct. So it's really important, as Cheryl said, to make sure that you're still enthusiastic about the role and the organization. I always say a good rule of thumb is like to bookend that whatever statement you're making. So start off with a really strong affirmation of like, thank you so much again. I'm really excited about this position. Then you sort of make your case for what you're asking for, and then finish again with, again, I'm really excited, or something similar, just so you're starting and ending with a really positive statement. It's can be common for people when they're negotiating, like Cheryl said, to come into the conversation disappointed or really narrowing in on the numbers, and they're not really talking about, they're not making any reference to the team or the opportunity. And especially in an extended conversation, it can quickly sort of give the impression that you may not actually be that interested in the role, and it's more about just the compensation, which obviously compensation is very, very critically important, right? But you also do want to demonstrate that you are excited about the position. So that's really important to sort of be giving the correct impression through it. My cat is attacking my arm, which is perfect timing. Plan your timing. This one is kind of less important, but it's just about knowing when to try to hop on the phone with someone. So usually you want to do negotiations over the phone. So you don't really want to have them over an email chain. So typically if you're looking to negotiate, you'd have received the offer or the basics of an offer from the recruiter. And then if you do want to negotiate, you could say, in an email reply, you could say, thanks so much again for this offer. I'm really excited. Do you have a few minutes to hop on the phone this week to chat about it? Here are some times that work for me. Don't do this at like 6 p.m. on a Friday or like on a Saturday, because you're going to catch someone when they're heading out the door. It's just not a good look, right? So just kind of be considerate of your timing. There are no like hard rules around this. Just think like, what else is going on? Is it, Thanksgiving tomorrow and I'm hitting them with this on Thanksgiving morning? Like, just be cognizant of, the time of the week and things of that nature. Cheryl already talked about this, but use data to back up your request and know your value. So do your research. Don't ever go in there with sort of a feeling of what might be a good salary for the role. Use data. If it makes you more comfortable in these conversations, have some notes written in front of you so that when you do hop on the phone, you don't sort of blank and deer in the headlights, because it is anxious. Even for people who have done this a lot, it's an anxiety-inducing situation to one degree or another, right? So have some notes in front of you, even if it's just your target range jotted down, whatever you need, have something in front of you for you to reference just for your own comfort. And remember ultimately that the employer chose you. They want to make it work. So mirror that attitude. Come in with that attitude of, I'm really excited about this. I really want to make it work. Let's come to an agreement so that we're all happy. That sort of energy is really important.
Wait, I'm going to actually
Yeah.
add on. I want to just expand on the plan your timing and give another example that might come up as a Q&A. So you never need to negotiate on the spot, right? So again, just expanding on planning your timing. If you do get caught on the phone, if they call you and you're walking down the street and they give you an offer and you're excited, express that enthusiasm. Say, so excited, can't wait to, think about it. Ask for some time. Say, can I look over some information and think about it? And can we reconnect tomorrow or in a couple days? And then you have some time to plan your negotiation conversation, to write your notes, and again, not be doing it when you're, at the grocery store or walking down the street or whatever. You can be in your room, at your home, at your desk, sitting and ready.
Yeah, that's a great point. Most recruiters will try and get a verbal response from you on the phone when they offer it. They'll just say like, what do you think? Like, are you going to accept, or whatever language they may use? If, be totally comfortable, again, expressing enthusiasm, but be totally comfortable pushing back and saying like, I'm looking forward to reading it over. When you send it over, I'm really excited. And if they really try to push you on giving a verbal accept, just say, I'd really be more comfortable reviewing it all written out in front of me. But I'm really excited about it. So looking forward to looking it over. Be comfortable kind of standing your ground and pushing back a little bit. It isn't necessarily like a sinister move on the part of the recruiter. They're just really looking like to have a confirmation that you're excited about it and that you're going to accept. Like, they're looking to like close this out. And oftentimes the hiring manager knows that that call is happening. And so as soon as that recruiter hangs up that phone, that hiring manager is going to say, what did the person say? Are they going to accept? So the recruiter would love to have an answer for them to say, yes, they said they're going to take it. So it's not like necessarily like a sinister thing of, oh, they're trying to lowball me, so they want to get me to accept on the spot. Oftentimes there's just other things involved, but definitely that's a great point raised by Cheryl. So now here are some don'ts, and I'll talk about these a little bit. We've mentioned some of them already, but don't this one's tricky, but don't be arrogant. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. So whenever you're talking through, making a case for yourself and advocating for yourself on, your qualifications, or, where the salary range is in the market, and that's sort of your justification for negotiating, make sure that you're resting purely on your own accomplishments and your abilities, and you're not using language like, well, I really think that I deserve more than this. A lot of it is tonal. Don't say like, well, I never expected to get an offer that was this low. Just be really, this is where the practice piece kind of comes in, even like with yourself in a mirror, or record yourself and then watch it back. Just make sure your tone, again, is really about sort of being enthusiastic about the opportunity. If you focus your energy on being enthusiastic about the opportunity and wanting to work towards a common goal, you're less likely to make this mistake because it's not like only about you, right? So kind of a common pitfall. Robin.
That's just one point I want to make is sometimes you're absolutely right, right? You deserve more. You
Yeah.
know, the data says that you should be being paid more. And there's an internal equity problem at a firm where last year's students are making that and they can't pay you more than someone who's already been at the company for a whole year. So part of what we are also saying is, remember, there's another side to this story. And so the I deserve doesn't belong there because they might even want to pay you. They just can't. And then it's really about all the other things about the job, which we're going to talk about in a second, but not the I deserve part. Sorry, John, for the interruption.
No, that's great. Yeah, it is a negotiation, right? It's not a hostage situation for either party. And you do really want to come in with a good positive energy with the end goal of like you getting a compensation that you're happy with and being able to start at a job you're really excited about. So those are really important principles to keep in mind. The next one I kind of touched on already, but don't behave as if it's more about the compensation than it is about the job. Like I said, this can happen in sort of an extended negotiation conversation where you may give a target range and then they come back and say, we couldn't quite hit that, but here's what we can do. And then there's kind of continued back and forth. Something that I've seen, especially new grads do when they're negotiating offers is not letting, again, it comes back to the enthusiasm. Like there's a desire to like kind of play it cool and calm. But what can happen if you sort of overdo that is your enthusiasm doesn't come through and you're on the phone and it sort of becomes like car sales and you're like 65 final offer. And the person in the company on the other end is like, do you even really want this? Or is this like about just money, or is it kind of like a game? Anecdotally, I will tell you, there was one particular candidate who I was having a really hard, when I was a recruiter, who I was having a really hard time with just negotiating. And he didn't really seem all that interested. And I did actually get to the point where I said, I got to ask, are you still interested? Because it doesn't really seem like you are. And the team like is wondering if this is a good fit anymore. And he totally sort of like, it all came down and he was like, oh my gosh, no, I'm so incredibly excited about this. I was worried that if I showed that I was excited, that I would lose some sort of leverage. And honestly, his whole tone shifted and we actually like made progress from there. So just be aware of like your, again, tone. I can't say it enough. So the last don't on this list, which is really important, is don't use anecdotes. So this doesn't happen super often, but again, as a recruiter, I did see it happen where a student would say, well, you made me this offer, but my friend is making this much over at this company. That is useless information. And oftentimes not even necessarily correct because one person told you one thing. It's not like aggregate data, right? And it's not data that the recruiter even necessarily has access to be able to like verify and reference. So make sure that you're providing like market data and pulling from the sources that that we showed you already. Robin, Cheryl, do you have anything to add to this list?
No.
Okay, cool. Practice, we talked about this a lot. You can practice, in the mirror with friends. You can absolutely work with us. We work with students all the time who want to talk through an offer. every single offer situation is different and different for different people from various angles. You know, from Robin's standpoint, talking about benefits hold wildly different values for different people. You know, it's different for everyone. So you absolutely can reach out to us if you ever need help working through an offer, but definitely practice too. And now Robin is going to talk about her handy little tool here.
So what we're really hoping with all this is that you get more than one offer, or that you are confronted with, should I take this offer now that I have it, even once you've negotiated? Because just because you got the salary you want, it doesn't mean you have to take the job. So you have to think about things. So I've been working with this weighted average checklist for years, and it's good for lots of things, but engineers really like it because it makes things slightly more objective and it has numbers. So how's that for a stereotype? Okay, so we'll move from there. So what I ask people to do is to make a spreadsheet with 15 things that are really important to you about your first job. It can be anything, you know, because it's really personal to you. So if location is important and San Francisco would be perfect, then San Francisco would get a weight of 5. Boston might be second best and get a weight of 4. And quite frankly, Florida is just too hot and you're going to weight that a 2. Now, if you go back to my very first slide, you probably wouldn't have applied to anything in Florida, but for the sake of this, 15 things, right? And the reason we get to 15 things is it makes you think, right? It makes you think of all the things you care about in a job, your boss, your coworkers, the actual day-to-day work. And quite frankly, once you are making enough, it may be that all those things are more important, but the enough, the walk away number might be your minimum, right? So after you weight each of those 15 things, and John, will you go on? So then if you get an offer and you only have one offer, you can actually look at you can do the exact same weighting of that offer for that organization. And there you look at them side by side, and every time the offer is a 5, that you're caring about it is a 2, but every time what you cared about was a 5, the offer is a 2, you're not going to take that offer, even if the money's great, right? Because money isn't everything. If you have 2 offers, here's where the weighted average piece comes in. You have the 15 things, you have each organization's ranking on the same items, the same criteria, and then you actually multiply column A, the first column, times your rating for each organization to get your new column, and then you add down. And in theory, the number that comes up higher is the better offer for you. It may not be the better offer for John, but it's the better offer for you. If you get, so that sounds completely objective and it sounds lovely. If you get a pit in your stomach and you say, oh, that's not what I thought was going to happen, what you know is you overweighted something. So the pit in your stomach is still an important thing. So this is not perfect, but it does give you the ability to sort of have a way to start weighing literally your offers against each other. My son did this many, many years ago when he went to college. He had applied to 10 schools, he was down to 2, and he did this for 2 colleges, 15 things that were important to him about college, and he came within 5 points. And the one that came up higher was Penn State, which is where he really wanted to go because he couldn't wait to do a whiteout football game, never mind. So he starts dancing around the house, we are Penn State. And I looked at him and I said, if you knew you wanted to go to Penn State, why didn't you just decide to go to Penn State? And his answer was, Mom, now if anyone ever asks me why I took that offer over another one, I can say it's because it met my criteria best. And you'd be able to do that with your offers as well. So I think, and we think, that it's one way, it's not the only way, but it's a handy dandy little thing to do. And you can actually do the weighting of the things that are important to you right away. And that, again, will be the kind of thing that can help you decide when to apply, what to apply to, and how to rate, how to compare 2 offers that might be completely different. One might be a marketing assistant and one might be a research assistant. And those are two completely different jobs, but you'd be able to look at them together or against each other to see which one you really want. Funnily enough, I seem to be the queen of non sequiturs. Basically, that's the end of our actual presentation. And so we're going to move into Q&A. And I see that we've had some.
We have a
Oh,
couple,
sorry.
yeah. So just as I said before, really quickly, if you need help, you can absolutely make an appointment with a career advisor and Handshake. So please do that. We have 30-minute appointments or 15-minute quick questions if it's just something quick that you want to talk through. So I'll read the questions that we've gotten so far, and then we can collectively answer them. So one question that came in was, if the employer gives a decision deadline, wait, sorry. I want to make sure that we answered the ones before this too.
Yeah, we did, I think.
Okay, yeah. If if the employer gives a decision deadline, when should you initiate negotiations? When is it too close to the offer acceptance date or the deadline to negotiate? I can take an initial stab at this. Sort of from the recruiting side, it's really whenever works for you. I certainly would never have expected someone, if I made you an offer today and the deadline was next Friday, I certainly would not expect you to necessarily come talk to me tomorrow about it. I can't say that I may not have been a little irked if you waited until like the 11th hour, the last hour of business on the very last day to negotiate. But really, as long as you're coming in anywhere in that window, even on the day that you have to give a reply, it's really okay. Just try not to do it at like 5 p.m. Mostly because if the offer, if we're saying the deadline is on Friday, if I haven't heard from you, it creates sort of a stressful situation because the hiring manager will say, the deadline's today. Have we heard from that candidate? What's going on? And I'm saying, I haven't been able to get a hold of them yet. That can be a little bit, it's kind of undue stress. So try and communicate as soon as you're able, but certainly don't do it too soon where you're not comfortable having that conversation, if that makes sense.
So I just want to add something. Remember that the reason there's a deadline for an offer is because if you don't take it, the company may also want to be making the offer to the next person. So they may have a hard deadline on that day. So you want to give them enough time to go get the signatures above that to add more money or whatever it is, so that you can still be set on the day you were supposed to be set. So, because that might be the day they move to the next candidate.
Yeah, and just riffing off that really quickly, Cheryl, that's totally true. Sometimes like they will be able to sort of squeeze a couple extra days to make adjustments, but sometimes they can't. And that's really the last day before, for internal reasons, they need to like move on to other things. So do try and be considerate of their timelines that they may have going on and give them the space to advocate for you internally, because they want to hire you. The recruiter wants to hire you, especially. They usually don't mind if you're asking for more money. So give them space to be able to go back internally and say, here's what they're asking for, and do that work and not cause like any crazy time crunches. Absolutely. Cheryl, what were you going to say?
I would just want to add, yeah, don't wait until the last day for no reason, right? So if you're waiting to hear from another company, if you're having a really hard time making your decision and you just need to sleep on it a couple more nights until you feel clear, that's fine. But if you like, once you're clear and once you know what you're going to do, act. Right? If you know you're going to accept and you're ready to ask for a little bit more money and then accept kind of no matter what, do it the next day after you get the offer, right? If you know, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that we had, which is a great one, is it acceptable to use another offer to negotiate? Absolutely. I would say be as transparent with what that offer looks like as possible, or as you're comfortable with. So some folks will be very comfortable saying, I got another offer from this company. It's for this much money. I'm still really excited about your position. Is there any way we could come in a bit higher? Generally speaking, my advice on this one is it can be tricky. You don't want to give the perception that you are like just leveraging one offer back and forth forever. If you start that conversation of I have another offer, folks want to know that it's still possible to hire you and that you're not just like using offers to leverage each other. So if it's true, what I generally advise is to say something like, you know, I got this other offer, it's for this much money. Is there any possibility to bring me in at this or higher? If so, I'd be happy to sign the offer. I generally advise that for negotiating anyways. If you have a target and you can end on here's the target range I was hoping for. If we could land somewhere in here, I'd be happy to sign. Because what they hear is like, okay, this isn't going to be like an extended ping pong back and forth. It's just going to be like, if we can get them there, it's done. And the recruiter will carry that information internally to say, you know, here's the information I have, here's what they're asking for. They say that if we can get them to this target, they'll just sign and we can close this out and have a new hire on our hands. People like care about that. That's important, right? And so if you are leveraging another offer, again, tone, still maintain the enthusiasm about that particular organization that you're talking to. Even if you are kind of equally excited, or even if, you know, you are potentially more excited about the other one, maintain that enthusiasm because it's really important to give the impression that you are like excited about that organization and that you're not like just leveraging offers for the sake of leveraging them. A couple other things here really quickly. Sorry, Cheryl and Robin. For this particular one, don't lie. And there's a couple ways that like lying can come into play in this. One, sometimes people will lie that they have an offer altogether. That's generally not a great idea for several reasons. You're just like taking a huge risk because you're using a piece of leverage that is an illusion, and that's like kind of risky. Just there's no real reason for it. The other reason, or the other element of this, is sometimes people will genuinely have an offer, but they will lie about the compensation. A recruiter, and especially an internal compensation team, will usually know or have a pretty damn good idea of what another company pays. So it really can only hurt you if you like tell a big fib about what an offer is. So yeah, be careful doing that. And again, anecdotally, I will tell you, I did have an incident where where I made someone an offer, and they said, I have an offer at Lyft for this much money. And I said, that's great. I'm so excited for you. Let me see what I can do for you. And in that moment, I was like, there's no way Lyft is offering this person that much money. So I hung up the phone. I knew people at Lyft and I instant messaged them and said, hey, would you ever offer a new grad this much money? And they said, hell no, that's definitely not a real offer. At which point I picked up the phone back with the candidate and I didn't make any mention of it, but I just said, you know what, the offer I made is going to be our final offer. So take it or leave it, basically. So they actually killed their negotiating power because they lied about it, and it was very easy for me to verify otherwise. So just don't do that. Don't fib when it comes to negotiating those pieces. Robin, Cheryl?
Nothing to add.
Okay. What else do we have? Are companies expecting new grads to negotiate? You should absolutely always try to negotiate. The worst thing that's really going to happen is they will say, you know what, we really don't have any ability to negotiate. Sometimes that's for internal parity to make sure all new grads are coming in at the same compensation level. You know, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, you know what, that really, unfortunately, is our final offer. We don't have any room to move. And then you have to make a decision on that number. A company is not going to pull an offer from you because you tried to negotiate, so long as you do it respectfully. So if you pick up that phone and try to negotiate and you're indignant or you're mad or whatever, or, suddenly you're giving them a different impression of who you are or what you want, then you could potentially put your offer on the table in jeopardy. But as long as you're entering that space in that, with the enthusiasm, in that sort of spirit of like getting to a common goal, they're not going to pull the offer. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, we can't move. Yeah, but always worth trying, always.
when you look at Cheryl's very first have a strategy sign, she said, is there room here for negotiation, right? So if you're asking it that way, you'll get an answer. I think anyone that knows me knows I tell people in the entire recruiting, the whole entire way in recruiting, from the first time you talk to someone till you get that job, you're supposed to be peppy, which is professional, enthusiastic, polite, prepared, and you. The negotiation part is no different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, any energy that you have, the same energy that you're trying to bring to interviews, the whole process, absolutely carry that through to negotiating. What other questions? Do you all have any other questions? I know we're just about at time, but if there's any other questions, we can field a couple. And like I said,
John,
we
we could
acknowledge.
you could take the slides off and we could see people if they want.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea, Robin. If they want.
And just while we're waiting, in case there is another question you want to ask right now, really do feel free to come and ask us questions. Even if you have a quick deadline, you can always email, call. If you can't, we have drop-ins at the Career Lab Tuesday through Friday. You can always get us quickly, and someone will be available to talk to you even if you need like that day or the next day to talk through an offer. So
yeah, that's a great point.
We're here for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Oftentimes our appointments are a little bit booked out and offers can be really time sensitive. Definitely send us an email. You can send an email to the general inbox. We will find a way to take a few minutes to talk with you about it for sure. So don't hesitate to reach out to us.